In this video, let us understand some important points of standard costing and material variance. Meaning of standard cost. Standard cost is nothing but it's a predetermined cost. So any organization for its matter will have a predetermined cost in its mind that if this cost is incurred, then there will be an efficient operation of the organization. Such a cost which is predetermined by the organization shall be termed as a standard cost. Okay. Meaning of standard costing. See, this is just the technique where the standard costs are ascertained. So or it is set. So standard costs are set by the organization and they are compared with the actual cost to find out whether there is any variation between these two, whether the standard cost and the actual cost is the same, or if there is any variation in between these two, and if any variation, what are the measures that are to be taken. All these shall be analyzed under standard costing. So let us understand this better. See, suppose you're with your friend and your friend gives you rupees 10 and tells you to purchase a pen from the stationery. You go up to the stationery and there you find out that the cost of the pen is rupees 15. You pay from your pocket rupees 5 extra and you purchase the pen and you return back to your friend and you tell him that there was a variation of rupees 5 and you report it to him. So this is what happens. But here it happens in a corporate world in a slightly different manner. Okay. So first the organization will set a standard cost. Okay, so be it material or be it for labor or be it for any overhead, the organization shall set certain standard cost which it will believe that if this cost is incurred, then there's an efficient operation of the management. There'll be proper working of the organization. Okay, then it will ascertain the actual cost, but every time it won't happen the same way, right? So sometimes there'll be some variation, there'll be more or less in the cost which is actually incurred. So this is what it will ascertain, and then it will compare the standard and the actual cost incurred. So it will compare these two and see if there is any benefit to the organization or if there is any adverse effect on the working of the organization. Then it will report the variance. So the difference is nothing but the variation or the variance, and and take up the appropriate actions. So here if you compare with the example which I had given, the first thing is the standard cost which you had set, then you realize that there is a difference in the actual cost. You compare these two and find out the difference. You report to your friend. Something like that will also happen in the organization. So this is what the standard costing means. So let us start with the material variance. So the raw material cost, that's what we're seeing here. Whether there is any variation between the standard the cost which you had set and the actual cost which will be incurring for the raw materials. That is what we'll be seeing in this topic. The first thing under this is material cost variance. So material cost variance is nothing but the difference between the standard cost and the actual cost incurred. So how do you find out this standard cost? Standard cost is nothing but the standard quantity. So you would have the company or the organization would have set certain standard quantity which of raw materials which shall be used in the production, and it shall have thought that this would be the standard price, maybe rupees so and so per unit will be the standard price. So when you multiply your standard quantity with your standard price, you will get your standard cost. Okay, next the actual cost. The organization would have used more units for production or less units for production, so that is your actual quantity used. Okay, actual quantity into the actual price per unit incurred. So when you multiply these two, you'll get your actual cost. The difference between these two will give you your material cost variance. So let us understand this with an example here. Here the standard cost and standard material required for producing 1 kg of groundnut oil is given. Okay, so the groundnut as raw materials required is rupees 10. Okay, so producing 1 kg of groundnut oil requires 10 kgs and the standard price per unit is 3 rupees per kg. Okay, so actual production data is given here. Okay, so there are 500 units produced. Okay, so now for per 1 unit of production you need 10 kgs, right? So for 500 unit how much? So 1 you need 10 kgs. Then for 500 what would be there? You need to cross multiply, that is 500 into 10, which will give you 500 into 10 will give you 5000 kgs. So the standard quantity is 5000 kgs for this question. Okay, next dimension, the groundnut as raw materials used is 3000 kgs. So the actual quantity used is 3000, which they have given directly to you. The actual price is given as 6 rupees. The price per material is 6 rupees, right? And the standard quantity we found out it's 5000 and standard price is given to us as 3. So when we solve this problem, we get 15,000 as our standard cost minus our actual cost is 18,000. So the company or the organization had thought that the standard cost would be 15,000, but they're incurring 18,000, which means to say that there's a 3,000 extra which they have incurred. This is a negative figure. So it is an adverse effect to the organization. So you write 3,000 and in the bracket you write A, which means there is an adverse effect. If it was the other way around, if it was favorable to us, we write the letter F because it is favorable to the organization. But here the actual is more than your standard cost, or you get a negative figure here. So that is why we mention it as adverse. Okay. Next, the material variance, the price variance. So here the price is a main word here. Okay, so material price variance, the formula is standard price minus the actual price into actual quantity. Okay, so price variance now, so we'll see the difference between the standard price and the actual price. So here the standard price is given to us as rupees 3. The same question I'm just giving you here. So here the actual price is given to us as 6. The actual quantity is 3000 kgs. So we write that, right? So now we have 3 minus 6 is minus 3. Okay, into 3000. Again, the standard price which you had thought was rupees 3. I mean the organization had thought rupees 3, whereas the actual price incurred was rupees 6, which means to say there's a extra 3 rupees cost on each quantity purchased. So therefore it is an adverse effect. So hence 3 into 3000 is 9000, and it's a negative figure, so it will be adverse written in the bracket. So A will be written in a right. Next we see material usage variance. So usage means the quantity will be considered here. So the standard quantity minus the actual quantity into our standard price. Okay, so our standard quantity, how much is the standard quantity? 5000, sorry, 500 into 10, which will give you 5000. We have done it in the first part itself. So 5000 is our standard quantity. Okay, actual quantity is 3000, which is directly given to us in the question, into the standard price. How much is the standard price given to us? 3, right? So we arrive at the answer 2000 into 3. So here we have to consider one thing. See, if you see, it's a positive figure, right? Because your standard set was 5000 units, so you assume that 5000 units should be incurring for the production, whereas you incurred only 3000, which means it's favorable to the organization. Hence 2000 into 3 will give you 6000 positive. So when it is positive, we write favorable, bracket F, right? This is the main 3 material variances. Fine. Apart from these, there are other 2 material variance, that is material mix variance and material yield variance. Okay, material mix variance. So this type of variance is a type of usage variance which arises only when more than one type of material is used for production. So here there are 2 materials used. If you see the question, there are 2 materials used. Only when there are more than one materials used for the production, then material mix variance comes into picture. Okay, so it is almost similar to your usage variance itself. The only thing is here we use the word revised standard quantity. So in usage variance we use standard quantity minus actual quantity into standard price. But here we have revised standard quantity minus actual quantity to standard price, where revised quantity is nothing but your standard quantity of one material divided by the total standard quantity of material into total of actual quantity of material. So if you see in this question, you have for raw material A, standard quantity is 30 units. Total quantity, standard quantity is 100 units. And the total of actual quantity of materials is 110 units. So for the revised standard quantity of material A is equals to 30 divided by 100 into 110, right? So which will give you 33. Similarly for B, so the revised standard quantity for B will be 70 divided by 100 into 110, which will give you 77. Okay, now let us consider the formula. So material mix variance, first we have to consider the revised standard quantity. For A, it is 33 minus the actual quantity. So what is your actual quantity? We have to consider that as well, right? So 26 units into what is the value? Standard price 40. Right, it's given to us the question. When we solve this, we get 280 favorable. You can use a calculator for calculation. 280, which is favorable. Right. Next, for B, it is 77 minus 84 units into 50, which shall give you 350 negative. So when it is negative, it is nothing but adverse. Right. So now let us see the total of these two. When you see the total of these two, 280 positive and 350 adverse, that is negative. We have 70, which is again negative, that is adverse. Right. So this is your final answer, and that is termed as your MBV, that is nothing but your material mix variance.